We have breaking news from the NHL. Looks as though the COVID-19 virus has hit the NHL with several players and staff testing positive, and it looks like the Edmonton Oilers might be selected as one of the host teams as a hub city for the NHL's return. We'll jump into the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some different kind of news today. It looks as though the NHL has been impacted quite hard by the COVID-19 virus. Now, of course, as we know, there's several places, especially right now in the U.S., that have become hot spots and have seen an explosion in their caseloads, as well as hospitalizations, etc. around this virus, especially areas like Florida and Arizona, to name a couple of the areas right now that are hit really hard. And it looks as though the Tampa Bay Lightning have confirmed that they have had several positive tests, including players and staff members, and therefore had to close their facilities where their players had been training in small groups. Of course, Phase 2 right now is voluntary phase for the NHL players. They're able to work out in small groups. Groups of 6, I believe, was the max at a time. And many NHL teams don't have a high percentage of their players really in their NHL city right now where it was voluntary. There are reports as well that some players from Tampa that were in other U.S. states were told just to stay home for right now until the situation kind of gets further along and they know what's happening a little bit better. Now, from what I can see, there's also about 30 or 32, I believe it was, pending COVID-19 test results that have not come back yet. So this outbreak has the potential to be bigger than what we know right now, but it's not really a big shocker. And the other big part of this, the main reason I want to talk about it, was how is this going to impact the NHL's return with having some positive tests. Now, keep in mind, we've heard all along that the NHL did not necessarily expect to be able to return to play and have 0 cases. For most places, whether it's the NHL or just places in general, it's hard to expect 0, no cases at all. What you have to be able to do is you have to be able to deal with the outbreaks, and you have to be able to isolate those who do become infected, and obviously take as many precautions and follow all the required protocols from the health officials to try to minimize things is really the goal all along. Now, keep in mind as well, Phase 3 and Phase 4 are going to be a lot more tighter in the kind of stricter bubble type areas where players won't be going out as much for day-to-day life. Obviously, right in their NHL cities or in their home cities, wherever they may be, they'll be circulating through the public at free will like everybody else, and clearly they're at risk just like anybody else to potentially pick up this virus. But once they get further along, there's going to be stricter protocols in Phase 3 and 4. So I'm not really sure this is going to have any kind of substantial impact on the NHL returning. Obviously, like I said, there is obviously going to be concerns more now than ever as time goes on and we see more and more cases. Clearly, there's going to be more concerns from some players and staff about putting themselves at risk, and that's totally understandable. Now, based on recent stats and how everything's going, at this point, I wouldn't even be completely shocked on the possibility that maybe they have 2 Canadian hub cities. I'm not really sure, but the stats right now in Canada are improving all the time, and I know there's a lot of places in the U.S. where the caseload is spiking. The last rumor was that Vegas was pretty much confirmed to be one of the hub cities, and now there's reports as well online from Jim Matheson indicating he's heard from multiple sources that Edmonton has been selected as a hub city. So I guess we'll have to wait for confirmation and wait for an announcement, but that is where things are at right now. So Tampa's closed their facility. Now, there is other reports out there as well from the Toronto Sun that just broke right before I started to record this video, with Steve Simmons reporting that Toronto Maple Leaf star Auston Matthews has tested positive for COVID-19. Now, I'm not sure how he would get that information. The report says that he had multiple sources outside of the Toronto Sun confirming this information to him. In most cases, though, this information is kept private and confidential, so I really don't know how the information would be leaked unless the player, like Matthews or anybody, makes a point to make it public because it'll raise awareness so people know what's going on with them. But, we know that Matthews has been in Arizona. A big chunk of his teammates are in Toronto. The Leafs do have one of the higher percentages of players in their home NHL city right now. Matthews was hanging out in Arizona with Freddie Anderson. Anderson is no longer there. We had reports in the last few days that Anderson actually had left Arizona and is now at one of his homes in California. Of course, he previously played for the Anaheim Ducks, so he has a place there where he's been for I'm not sure exactly how many days, but he's no longer with Matthews. But there's been some talk that there were players in the last few days, even earlier this week, there were reports and rumors that some players that were staying in Arizona had tested for the virus and that they could have been a positive case there, which maybe that's why Anderson left. I'm not sure. Steve Simmons' report says that Matthews is isolating at his home in Arizona. So obviously, I guess we'll wait and see what comes from this, if there's any truth. I mean, if it is true, obviously we wish Auston Matthews a full and speedy recovery. Just because some of these professional athletes are, relatively young and in excellent health condition for the most part, doesn't mean that they're not at risk to have severe complications from this virus. We've seen it kind of do some pretty crazy, unexpected things to different kinds of people. It's not just the elderly or people with, that are immunocompromised that are running into severe issues. I've seen numerous cases. So obviously we want everybody to be healthy and safe. As much as we want hockey, we don't want it to come at the expense of anybody's health. So I guess we'll see how this impacts things. But right now, I think it's too early and premature to say that it's going to have a negative impact on the return. Now, we also saw some major impacts on baseball. Not far from the Tampa Bay Lightning facilities in Clearwater, there's also been some baseball, I believe it was the Philadelphia Phillies, who had a number of positive tests as well. And of course, as we know with baseball teams, many of them have their spring training facilities in Florida, and some of them are closing up too. So there's certainly a lot going on in Florida right now, and obviously it's probably best for the professional athletes to kind of move out of there to kind of remain safe. But we'll have to see what happens and wait for further details and announcements from the NHL. But as long as this pandemic's been going on, this is probably the most we've heard as far as having a direct impact on its players and staff. I know when it first happened, there were a few positive tests. I know there were some, I believe there was a few with the Ottawa Senators. I'm not sure right offhand what other teams there were, but no names were ever released. And this type of information is normally kept private and confidential, so I don't know how they can come to say that Matthews has this. So I wouldn't be talking about it otherwise, but it's certainly something worth putting out there. There's numerous mainstream media reports now jumping on the Steve Simmons report talking about this. So we'll see what happens, but like I said, we'll wait for further clarification if this is indeed true, and we'll see how this impacts everything moving forward. So let me know your thoughts, how this is going to impact the NHL's return for phase 3 and 4. Are we going to get hockey? Is it going to end up being canceled now because of this? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.